Good afternoon. It's Friday, the 23rd of January 2015, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host this afternoon, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. Behind the technical desk, Nick Green. And can I say what a sad day this is as we join in with the mourning of the death of Leon Brittan. And UK Column has recognised this extraordinary day. I've put on one of my special black ties, but sometimes words are just not enough. Can we bring the first screen on, please, Nick? Well, there we are. Some very, very sad comments and, of course, tremendous praise by members of the British government, both serving and former, all mourning the death of Leon Brittan and, of course, totally ignoring the fact that we still have not got a full and independent inquiry into the abuse of children in UK. And, of course, we really need to look at the parts that Mr. Brittan played in helping to ensure that there was no inquiry into the abuse of children in UK. So on that sad note, we're going to leave the story of Leon Brittan and we're going to move on to the streets of Britain where much more important things are taking place, including the repossession of people's homes under the basis of fraudulent court documents, perjury in court, and of course corrupt criminal banking institutions of the very sort that Leon Brittan happened to support. So we'll take you over now to the story about the eviction of Mr. Tom Crawford in Nottingham. And we should be able to take you live to his team. Hello, welcome, Mr. Crawford.
Hello, Brian.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, fine. It's been a remarkable day today.
Well, we understand that. We've had some reports in, obviously, from your team. You have the floor at the moment. With a little bit of an introduction for anybody that's joined this story new, tell us what the situation is and tell us about the background to how we've had so many people on the streets of Nottingham today.
Okay, the background is, as you know, the first time I made a little video, and we had about 350 people turned up. 7 days ago, we had banging on our door, and Sue, my wife, looked out the window, and there was a bailiff, and that was at 5 o'clock in the morning. Now, that's a breach of the peace. We reported it to the police. They didn't want to do anything about it. I put out a little video again. I think it was even shorter than the last one, and approximately we gave out 500 denial of access forms, and they tell me at the top road there's people all the way along, so we've probably got about 700 plus.
Well, that's really excellent. So we can now see that people within UK are not only becoming informed about the criminality and corruption in the courts and the banks, but they're also now prepared to come out on the streets. And key question for me, was everything peaceful this morning?
It was once again a festival. The bailiffs deliberately picked this particular time because we were forecast snow. But the big man up above, he smiled down on us, and we got sunshine outside, and sunshine coming from the people themselves. The bailiffs did make an appearance, but they lied. They said they weren't bailiffs. And the people there just shouted at them to identify themselves, and they wouldn't. But happy atmosphere once again. as last time.
Okay, and so the basis is the bailiffs turn up. How many bailiffs were there, and were there police in attendance again this time?
No police in attendance. That's excellent news because they're doing their job. This is a civil matter. But I didn't see all of them, but approximately 4 bailiffs. I believe one of them may well have been that notorious man Caress. I think he's grown a beard to hide his identity. But you can change your face, but you can't change your evil intentions.
Right, okay. So the police don't turn up, and what was the sort of demeanour of the bailiffs? Were they hesitant? Were they concerned? Were they worried at the number of people on the streets?
Well, the one I spoke to, he was absolutely terrified. These people are cowards. All they needed to do was come along, present their papers to us, we'd examine them, and we'd take it from there. But we would have arrested them, and we'd have instructed the police to have arrested them. But like the cowards they are, they won't come along and present themselves in a true light.
Right. And what is your plan now? Because, of course, these bailiffs could come back again. They're cowards, so they like to come back when usually when there's only one person in the house. And I think they're particularly keen on approaching houses when it's just a lady at home. So well, how are you going to deal with the fact that, of course, these people have got the finances, they've got the money to keep coming back to harass you and your family?
Well, I'll let Guy answer that one because he's the chap that knows the next move that we're going to do.
Hi. What we're planning on doing is there's 500 people here, so we're lucky enough to have someone with a double-decker bus up the road. Peter Tolby Jenkins is coming here, and so we're going to crew a lot of people down to the police station, queue up in an orderly fashion, in a single file, and make as many police complaints as we can. We'll do this to protect the family because they will be ongoing criminal investigations into the fraudulent nature of what's gone on against them. In the meantime, prior to that, we're going to investigate why the bailiffs haven't turned up. Again, they're threatening and they're giving threatening letters and harassing the family. And of course, it's an unsecure position for them because as soon as we go, the criminals might come around with fraudulent bits of paper and try and drag them out. So we've got to stop that. And so I feel that by going down to the police station, and if we lay 100, perhaps 200 complaints, I don't know, we'll find out. It will keep them occupied, and we should provide some sort of security for them. Then there's certainly been enough publicity. As we're on the show today, RT have been up here, and so let's see where we go with that. So that's our next stage this afternoon, chaps.
Right, Guy, thank you very much for that. One of the things that I find particularly interesting, if you're talking about laying complaints on the police, as I understand it, Russell Lane is in the Nottinghamshire Police District, and the Chief Constable is, of course, Chris Eyre. And Chris Eyre just happens to be the very man who is responsible for criminal justice for the private company, also known as the Association of Chief Police Officers. So we've got the very interesting situation that Chris Eyre, one of the top police officers in Britain, seems to be doing the right thing with regard to dealing with the public in this case. But as we will be reporting shortly, his police officers have been harassing and intimidating child abuse victims. Could it just be the number of people that are present on the streets in this case is actually helping to gently change Chris Eyre's view?
Well, let's pursue it because ultimately, 12 people are enough people to have one person sent to prison for life. That's what a jury is, yeah? Well, we've got 10, 20, 30, 40 juries here today. So if we've obviously got an opinion on something and we're the public. So, let's pursue that and let's pursue these angles because we're not going to get any justice through. We've gone down all the protocols of reporting things to the police individually, and they basically say, sod off, you and whose army? Well, here's the army, the British public are here. So we'll do it all in an orderly fashion, And let's pursue these angles while we've got the sway of public support. And it's only going to get more. It's only going to get more. People are meeting here today, all communicating about their own individual problems. And so let's just keep the numbers up and keep the pressure on.
Okay, that's brilliant. I have one further question, and that is, of course, how many journalists attended? Did we see the BBC present? Was the BBC there to interview people and find out what people are concerned about? Did any journalists turn up?
Well, full praise to RT. RT have been here. They've interviewed everybody. They've interviewed Tom. They've interviewed me about the fraudulent documents, and they were quite surprised about the magnitude of what I was saying to them. And they've interviewed Roger, and they've interviewed the whole family. So hats off to RT. There have been some other journalists, some local journalists, some very nice local journalists who've been here. The BBC, as far as I'm aware, have been, distinct by their absence.
Well, what a remarkable situation that under David Cameron's so-called democracy, which we will be talking about in this news programme, it takes Russia Today television to actually come onto the streets of Britain to report what's really happening. And of course, an absence of the BBC, which is the very organisation which has been boasting to the public that it's going to be running very in-depth analysis of the importance of Britain's Magna Carta, and it's going to be Radio 4's Law in Action programme that's going to be apparently discussing the importance of Magna Carta and common law. So I think UK Column will say today just sheer hypocrisy again by the BBC, totally absent from the streets of Nottingham, where you're saying between 500-700 people on the streets. Of course, we didn't see the BBC when they came out for the arrest, when people were on the streets, 600 people were on the streets for the arrest of the judge in Birkenhead. And we've got this 3.6 billion BBC propaganda machine that can't find a journalist to report people losing their homes through criminal activity. Bit of a statement from us. Final word to you. What would you like to see happen in order to deal with this situation?
Well, first and foremost, we want security for Tom and his family. We don't want feeling that people are going to drag them out early hours of the morning. And he received a court letter which basically threatened him with that. It was the court threatening that. And secondly, there's apparently a helicopter around now, police helicopter. So that's going to be another very interesting development. But thirdly, look, what we want today is we want fairness and justice in all these matters. And if they've got the correct documentation, then show us. They haven't got it. And so let's get security for Tom and his family first and foremost. And then we're advertising that we're interested in people's cases. So if people want to come forward, if they've been wronged by the court in bankruptcy or possession hearings, come forth, give us your details on the UK Home Guard site, if they go to Facebook. And it'll take us perhaps 3 weeks to get back to them, but we will get back to everybody. And, let's put the pressure on them now. It's 4 months for the election. Well, let's sort it out, yeah?
Okay, well, thank you very much for that report. And of course, we'll be watching closely what happens in the future. But yes, encouraging news today that Mr. Crawford's still in his house. That's excellent. And of course, to see so many people on the streets. Yeah. I've just got a little historic. So thank you very much for joining us. We'll move on with the rest of the news now. I've got a little historic picture. These were some of the demonstrators that were outside the property last time. Banners and supporters. There we are outside of Tom and Sue Crawford's home in Russell Lane, Nottingham. And UK Column tweeted out as soon as we knew that we understood it was just 500 peaceful members of the public had seen off the bailiffs. And of course, we've included BBC News and Chloe, the lady from the BBC who was interested in the Magna Carta. If you do tweet that particular BBC reporter, make sure you get the right tweet handle because there are several ladies of the same name. What's the solution? Well, of course, it's this. It is the British Constitution Group. It's reclaiming our common law. And as we are saying for our spring conference at the end of February, it is the time for action. Do you think, Mike, we've just seen that on the streets of Nottingham?
I think we have.
Okay, well, we'll depart from the reality of people having their homes stolen, and there are tens of thousands of homes being fraudulently repossessed across UK as we speak. Let's return to the quasi-reality, of course, of the mainstream press and the very, very sad news of the death of Leon Brittan. So we'll just recap those wonderful comments, the praise from Prime Minister David Cameron, that Mr. Leon Brittan had been a dedicated and fiercely intelligent public servant, distinguished service, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Home Secretary, really glowing man. And we're going to say UK column mourns the loss of Leon Brittan. And of course, the fact that the evidence of Westminster child abuse just happens to go with him. Well, here he is. Let's have a closer look at the man. We think it is a proud achievement that Leon Brittan was the man who lost not one, but several dossiers compiled by Conservative MP Geoffrey Dickens. What was Mr. Dickens bravely speaking out about paedophiles in Parliament. But not to worry, because Leon Brittan achieved a lot, particularly as Vice Chairman of UBS Investment Bank. But of course, he was also a trade advisor to Prime Minister David Cameron after the coalition government was formed in 2010. We think he was a traitor effectively in that he was a dedicated Europhile. Remember that the European Union still has not produced any fully audited accounts. And he went on to spend a decade in Brussels as a European Commissioner. What he would have been doing, of course, was helping to undermine the sovereignty of Britain as a nation state. And as a result of that treasonous work, he was made a peer. Trade and industry, well, of course, what did he do? He helped to destroy the Westland Helicopter Company. So well done, Leon Brittan. Another piece of Britain's industry and military infrastructure ripped apart. And finally, with great skill and diligence and intelligence, we recognise this man was endowed with every benefit possible for a human being. He was interviewed by the police over a historical allegation of rape, but of course no action was taken. Well, the BBC is clearly in love with Mr. Brittan, and they've put more. We're calling this a dog's breakfast of propaganda, because it really is so appalling that the BBC, who cannot investigate child abuse, who pull reporters off the evidence of child abuse, can spew out this propaganda in the name of Leon Brittan. Here he is asleep in Westminster, so presumably he was doing a diligent job as an MP. And let's remember what Mr. Cameron has been saying. As a central figure in Margaret Thatcher's government, Leon Brittan helped her transform our country for the better by giving distinguished service as Chief Secretary of the Treasury, Home Secretary, and Secretary of State for Trade and Industry. Well, we think it was the treasonous transformation of the EU. What have we got today? Well, we're a vassal state of the EU, a society of criminality, fraud, corruption, and of course, paedophilia at the highest levels. Are we being over the top in our reporting? Well, let's bring people back to one of Leon Brittan's protégés, and that is Nick Clegg, who we're calling here a Europhile puppy. And what did Mr. Clegg do when faced by child abuse victim and campaigner Bill Maloney? He ran away. Is it significant that it was Leon Brittan who gave the now Liberal Democrat leader Nick Clegg his introduction to politics, employing him as an office aide when he was a trade commissioner in Brussels? Well, we don't think so. We think this is highly significant, and we think it adds to Nick Clegg's fear of the subject of institutional paedophilia. But let's return to the quasi-subject of evictions in Nottingham and the performance of Nottinghamshire Police under Chief Constable Chris Ayres. what better place to start than this very brave lady, Beechwood child abuse victim and whistleblower Melanie Shaw. And the very sad news is that after weeks of harassment by Nottinghamshire police, we do not know where Melanie Shaw is at the moment, and we're again very concerned for her safety. She's been followed and harassed by Nottinghamshire police. She's received malicious telephone calls. She's had her home smashed open by a mob of aggressive male officers. She's had possessions taken. She has been arrested and then later kicked out on the street late at night with no phone, and we don't know where she is now. Meet Chris Eyre. Here he is, Chief Constable, Nottinghamshire Police and Head of Criminal Justice, ACPO. So this is the man responsible for the vicious treatment of a child abuse victim. But look what this man has been tweeting out. Here is his ACPO tweet, Association of Police Chiefs. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, there's this. Today's Leveson report on streamlining criminal justice is welcomed by our CJ lead, CC Chris Eyre. And police have apparently worked closely with the report team. Over to you, Mike.
Yes, so Leveson, of course, Brian Leveson, the same Leveson that attempted to regulate the press, he has released this report, Review of Efficiency in Criminal Proceedings by the Right Honourable Sir Brian Leveson. So I guess that makes him a Privy Councillor, and he's President of the Queen's Bench Division. And most of it, he's saying, most of the issues that he is discussing in this document say do not require legislation, and he's saying, for example, more use of technology to allow remote hearings, tighter case management by judges, and in some cases timetables for evidence and speeches, more high quality equipment in courts to ensure that footage from police body-worn cameras can be shown. Flexible opening hours sounds like a shop, Brian, but actually it's much more serious than that, isn't it?
I would say so. When do you want people to disappear? Roughly 3 o'clock in the morning. Get them out their houses, into the Black Maria and straight into court.
Right. But the biggest danger of this report, to my mind, is part 10 of the report, where he's, of course, singling out juries. And what he is saying is that the current right of a defendant to choose a jury trial should be taken away, or at least mostly taken away. And in fact, lo and behold, the BBC in their reporting is pretty definitive about this. They say, is it still right that a defendant can decide to have a jury trial for stealing a newspaper from a shop, or should that now be decided by an independent judge? So this, again, part of the constitutional reform agenda. Of course, they're dressing it up, inefficiencies in the criminal justice system, but absolutely part of the constitutional reform agenda. Remove juries, remove the protections that juries provide, and of course, remove jury nullification, which is a power that juries still have, which isn't really communicated to them terribly often, and certainly something that probably judges would be less willing to use if they were independent. And, aside from that, I still question the use of the word independent. It seems to have some meaning that I am not familiar with.
Absolutely. And, of course, we just need to remind ourselves that Lord Leveson has hopped from pushing state control of Britain's press and media under the Leveson inquiry into the press and media. He's hopped across from controls of the press, free speech in Britain. Now we're on the road to secret courts operating in the dead of night. Who is Lord Leveson? And I think the question is, from where does he get his power? Clearly an extraordinary man. Do you think he's more powerful than Leon Brittan was?
I have no idea.
I don't know. Well, we'll look into this further, but immensely powerful man. And of course, let's remember he was fully supported by political charity Common Purpose, aided and abetted by the BBC, Robert Peston being the man who originally had the secret meetings in the offices of Pearson offices of Sir David Bell. If you want to do something about this, please support the UK column. Just a quick advert to say you can see UK column news repeated daily in this section on the website. Click on that and you can have a look at that. And we've got the archive, which normally appears centre screen. focusing on Nigel Farage for this advert, but not always, of course. And we're very keen for people to get onto the iTunes site, and particularly, if you will, to rate our uploads there. So if you want to help us get the news out and what's probably happening in UK, that's where you need to go. Alex G.
Yeah, just another quick reminder of Alex's official launch party for his book. Please get along to that if you can. And of course, don't forget, once again, the conference at the end of February, first day of March. And with that in mind, of course, the coalition seems to be increasingly a done deal, doesn't it? Because here again, we have now more little backroom deals being done. In this case, the DUP attempting to join up with Ed Miliband. So basically, it looks like the notion of a coalition is a done deal, and now they already, before any result has even been announced, before anybody has cast a single vote, we're already making alliances and with a view to who's going to form the next government.
Well, it was Julia Middleton, Chief Executive of the political charity Common Purpose, who is quoted as saying she wondered whether people knew whether people had sufficient guile to help form the coalition. And it was interesting that her statements were actually made before the existing coalition was in power.
Yeah.
Okay, well, probably if we're looking at Miliband and talking British politicians, we should be talking war.
Well, indeed. And while the sort of Ukrainian war has dropped off the radar as far as the British press is concerned, they're certainly not pushing it as a major agenda item at the moment. Nonetheless, the violence continues. So in Donetsk, in the last day or so, 13 people killed as a mortar hit a bus. And this continues to go. The context of this, of course, is that there's been a foreign ministers meeting between Russia and Ukrainian foreign ministers that was held in Berlin on Wednesday night. And they were calling they were basically trying to organize that the Ukrainian and Russian-backed rebels, as it's described in the mainstream press anyway, should pull back from this conflict, but of course that isn't happening. But in order to defuse this situation, according to Defense News at least, the United States is sending troops to the Ukraine. Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, who's the head of the US Army Europe, he announced on a visit to Kiev on Wednesday that American soldiers will deploy to Ukraine this spring to begin training 4 companies of the Ukrainian National Guard. So now the United States are going in to train Ukrainian troops, which of course is going to defuse this whole situation. The Defense News article says that funding for the initiative is coming from the congressionally authorized Global Security Contingency Fund, which is requested by the Obama administration in the fiscal 2015 budget to help train and equip the armed forces of allies around the globe. Sorry, but in the meantime, if we look at the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, of course, they have the famous clock, which last year was saying 6 minutes to midnight, has moved forward 3 minutes. They've just announced this. So this was originally founded in 1945 by University of Chicago scientists. These were the scientists that helped to develop the first atomic weapons for the Manhattan Project. And they decided that they would create the Doomsday Clock in order to give an overview of how they felt, or how dangerous they felt the global situation was. So they've moved it forward to 3 minutes to midnight, and they are blaming unchecked climate change, global nuclear weapons modernizations, and outsized nuclear weapons arsenals. They're saying these pose extraordinary and undeniable threats to the continued existence of humanity. Well, they go on to say that world leaders have failed to act with the speed or the skill required to protect citizens from potential catastrophe. And I would just say that I disagree with that statement, that global leaders have failed to act. The situation is much more serious in my view, because global leaders are directly organizing for war. So I just wanted to highlight this once again, because this is the Treaty of Westphalia that was written following the 30 Years' War. And what it says, the first clause of that treaty says, and this is the treaty which basically established modern nation states. The first clause of that treaty says that there shall be a Christian and universal peace, and a perpetual true and sincere amity, that this peace and amity shall be observed and cultivated with such a sincerity and zeal that each party shall endeavour to procure the benefit, honour, and advantage of the other, and thus on all sides they may see this peace and friendship flourish by entertaining a good and faithful neighbourhood. And I just once again want to compare that with what the Chinese president, who's supposed to be a nasty communist, has said last year during the BRICS conference. He said, history tells us the law of the jungle isn't the way of human coexistence. Every nation should obey the principle of equality, mutual trust, learning from each other, cooperating and seeking joint benefits for the construction of a harmonious world, sustained peace and joint prosperity. And those, to my mind, those two quotes really demonstrate the same kind of thinking. On the other hand, in the State of the Nation address on Tuesday, President Obama said, but as we speak, China wants to write the rules for the world's fastest growing region, that would put our workers and businesses at a disadvantage. Why would we let that happen? We should write those rules. And it was really, if you look at the State of the Nation speech as a whole, it was a really pretty, he was banging the war drums pretty hard.
Well, he's a failing leader, isn't he? And that's the classic.
Well, and we've got a failing financial system, which we'll come on to in a second, which is part of the reason. The person who has really come out and criticised that is Mike Baston, Mike Baston is a visiting professor at the University of International Business and Economics in Beijing. He's also a senior lecturer on marketing at Southampton Solent University School of Business, and he wrote in the China Daily. This was breathtakingly hypocritical. Once again, it is to China that attention should be paid for genuine diplomacy and international engagement aimed at strengthening the world economy. Sadly, it's to the US where one needs to look no further for a culture of bullying and belligerence towards often smaller and weaker nations. I really couldn't agree more. Really pretty dangerous situation. Yeah. And Western leaders, of course, the people that are really hyping this up, and the special relationship is part and parcel of that.
Yeah, interesting and very, very dangerous times. Well, if it's dangerous overseas at 3 minutes to midnight, it's even more dangerous in UK, because this is the Stasi state that David Cameron's Conservatives are unleashing. And thank you to the viewer who sent in this. This is a poster from a workplace. Are you concerned about someone travelling to or returning from Syria or another conflict zone? Are you worried about someone showing signs of being radicalised? Then call 101. So here we are. Get British people to spy on each other. And of course, ACPO poster, we come back onto the subject of a private company, ACPO. So more and more resources going into spying on the British people. What do we need? Money.
Money, yes. So yesterday, as expected, Mario Draghi announced his quantitative easing plan, 60 billion euros a month for 18 months. That's 1.1 trillion euros in total. The BBC last night explained that what was happening was that there was no need anymore to print physical cash. That Draghi had the ability to create electronic money and hand that over to the banks in the hope that they would lend it out to the real economy. The banks, of course, no intention of doing any such thing. The reality is that quantitative easing has nothing to do with Eurozone deflation, which is how it's being presented. It is a bailout, no more and no less. But what's interesting is that the purchase of the bonds, which is how this works, is going to be mainly the responsibility of each individual nation's central bank, not the European Central Bank itself. So the ECB is only going to process about 20% of these transactions. The rest have to be done by national central banks, which means that, of course, the terms of each of these deals is different for every country. So what happened to a single currency and a single economic system? Almost immediately, the SocGen, Société Générale, the big French bank, well, they were sent out just like Oliver Twist to say, please, sir, we want some more, because they say that this amount of money is only a third of what's needed. So basically, in other words, it isn't going to solve anything with regard to the solvency of Eurozone banks. It merely delays their demise. And as expected, the value of the euro fell. And if you believe the BBC, this is great for Eurozone exporters, but it's not so great for the other nations around the Eurozone because they're finding their currencies going up as in in sympathy, really.
Yeah, Mike, I'm a bit confused here because you seem to be suggesting that the banks are creating money out of nothing. They don't even have to print the paper. They simply put the numbers into a computer system. Surely that can't be right.
Well, of course it is.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Banks are creating money out of nothing, which we've known for a very long time. It's called fraud and deceit on the public, and fully supported by David Cameron, George Osborne. Well, some good news. Here's inside GCHQ. As usual, we'd like to welcome GCHQ viewers to UK Column News. And it was ITN that was able to show us that basically GCHQ is now living its own reality by watching BBC News reports circled, which just happened to be the reports created by GCHQ's reports in the first place.
Yeah.
So what's known as a circular system in the bunker mentality. But thank you very much for the viewer that sent us this, because we were astonished to actually see alongside the BBC, if you have a look at the top of the screen, there we are. UK Column News live on screen inside GCHQ. So well done, GCHQ team. If you want to know what's really happening in the world, just contact us and we'll be happy to tell you. And we'll leave viewers and listeners on the sad note that it is Black Tie Day today because, of course, Leon Brittan has died. So it'll be a quiet evening for me with the curtains pulled. We'll be back on Monday at the...
No, we won't.
We won't be back on Monday.
Well,
absolutely right.
We won't because, unfortunately...
Unfortunately, we have some other commitments.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. So we'll be joining viewers and listeners again on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. So thank you for that. Stay with us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.